Welcome to Pecan Tutorial, where we are looking at GeneMark Coding Capacity and all the other evidence that goes into choosing a proper start site for protein coding genes. So what we're looking at here is looking at the GeneMark Coding Capacity. And that is determined by the GeneMark plots. And let's say we were considering this one right here. If we pick a start site that is suggested by the dark line here, which is what GeneMark is called, there would be a significant amount of coding capacity here that would not be captured by this start site and this stop site. So let's take a look at the gene for that. You notice there is another start site over here, which would capture all of the coding capacity. So if we go look at this particular gene, we see here is the start site for this start right here, and here is the start site for this one that would include all the coding capacity. Now the problem with going with the longer one, which would make sense, is that it overlaps this gene here, and we can see that it actually overlaps with to the tune of 41 bases. Okay, so I told you earlier that we discourage having overlaps bigger than 30. Here's an example where it's 41. So what do we do? Well, let's look at all the other parameters here. You look at the z-score, is over 2, that's great. The z-score of the other one's around 1. That's the low end of the spectrum here. They both have good spacers. And the final score with the high z-score is minus 3.9. That's a very good. And this one's over 6, almost 7. So this is almost 4, this is almost 7. Okay, so you look at the z-scores, the longer one is obviously a lot better. This also would be the longest open reading frame if we pick that one. So that's not a big plus, but it's a minor plus. But most important is it would contain all of the coding capacity. Okay, so that looks like this would be the best start site of choice. If we scroll up here and take a look at the Starterator, it contains all, excuse me, the suggested start is supported by Starterator. So that's what it means. It's this start site is supported by Starterator. So whenever you complete your Starterator, you should select one of these three. If it's supported by Starterator, select the suggested start. If it is not supported by Starterator, the non-informative, if there's no Starterator information is when you would use the NA or not available. Okay, so this looks like the start site of choice, even though it has a large overlap with the previous gene. It has a great ribosomal binding, and it has certainly all of the coding capacity. So that's another thing as you're doing your annotations, make sure that you select one of these, yes or no. Does it contain all of the coding capacity? Yes. If you were to select this one, you would have to put no for all of the coding capacity because it's not capturing all of that. Okay, so we've kind of looked at, for this particular example, all of the information here, the Starterator information, the gap. So that's a little minus right there because it's so big. The z-score, the gap, or the spacer, the final score is great for the ribosome. It's the best one here as far as the choice goes. If we were to pick the 22 for the gap, that's not a plus or a minus. So this is a little bit of a minus because it's a big overlap. All the other ones are pluses. This is a big plus versus having no for the coding capacity. And so overall, looking at this sum, I would pick this one. So let's go back and take a look at kind of a summary here. When we're weighing all the information, we look at the Starterator information. Is it a plus? Okay. The NCBI is going to match this Starterator, and if it's 1-to-1, I'm sure those are 1-to-1. We can go look, but I'm pretty sure it is close to 1-to-1. Scroll down here. Yep, 1-to-1. 1-to-1 to 1-to-1 to 1-to-1. Lots of 1-to-1s. Okay. Usually, if you have a good Starterator support, the NCBI is 1-to-1, and this shows it is. Then look at the RBS, ribosomal binding site, the z-scores, spacer, total was all good for the longest one. The gap was a little bit of a minus because it was so big of an overlap. The GeneMark coding capacity was a big plus, and it was the longest open reading frame to have that first one. So this is how you look at all of the information, take it in total, weigh it for each of them. So you would do that for this one, you'd do that for this one, and compare the two. This is a big minus here. This is a big minus here. Okay. And so those would be two big minuses. This would also be a this would be a not informative if we were to pick this start site. And so that would be a big minus. There's three big minuses for this one. Only one little minus for the large gap, overlapping gap. So this comes out on top, obviously. And that's kind of summarizes how you would pull all of the information together to come up with your final choice as far as a start site. Okay, that's all we have for this one. Stay tuned. The next thing we're going to look at are tRNA genes. Thank you and bye.